So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere go to war. Now, I have done the Northern and Southern Hemisphere before, and that video did pretty well, and I think it's only plausible that I go for the East versus West scenario now, so that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. Now, if you do enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell, like the video, leave a comment, share, all that good stuff. So here's an interesting scenario before I continue on. Right now, I'm at 99.4 thousand subscribers. I'm going to start live streaming at around 99.5 or 99.6 thousand subscribers. And that very well could be before you see this video. So there is a chance that we've already hit 100K. And me right now, I don't know that. Now, the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere are very different hemispheres culturally and, of course, well, geographically. In the Western Hemisphere, we mostly have the New World, which includes the Americas, while over here in the Eastern Hemisphere, we have the Old World, which includes Africa, and then, of course, Asia, and a majority of Europe. Now, the way that I decided this team was by the prime meridian, which I'm going to give you a rough draft of where it is. It basically, goes sort of like that. So there's where the prime meridian is. If you don't know what the prime meridian is, here's the equator. It goes like this around the world. Prime meridian is the exact same thing as the equator, except it's vertically, so it goes like this around the world. And just like the north versus south video, I'm going to make it more fair for the underdog, which in case is the Western Hemisphere, and any country that touches the prime meridian, no matter the majority of which hemisphere it's in, is going to go over to the Western Hemisphere. So that includes Algeria, where a majority of the country is in the Eastern Hemisphere. However, it touches the prime meridian, therefore it's going to go to the west. But now let's just go ahead and jump straight into the fighting. First off, we have France doing something actually really smart, and that's barricading their country in. They're going to use all of their military to defend themselves along this border, and they already have kind of a natural one right here, but they might want to watch out up north. Of course, you have the Alps down here, so you're good with that, but you definitely want to protect this lowland area up north here to prevent the red team from invading. So that's exactly what they do. They hit up tons and tons of defenses. They set up bunkers. They set up air support. Naval wise, I don't know what they can do. They'll probably just sit over here in this pond and just light them up. Elsewhere along the border here in Algeria, Mali, and Burkina Faso, and then this area, Togo and Benin. I don't know which is which because I'm sorry, I just don't know. We have Ghana right here. Their defenses aren't going to be as well. However, though, this part of Africa does have a slight advantage over this part of Africa, specifically in the north with Morocco and Algeria. These guys are one of the stronger countries in Africa, of course. Taking on Tunisia and Libya shouldn't be a problem, but Egypt might pose as a threat. And then, of course, we have the Middle East entering in over here through the Suez Canal. So eventually that could be a problem as well. So the very first advance from either side is going to take place down here near Ghana. And it, of course, is going to be Nigeria pushing into said country. Now, Nigeria, of course, is going to be the stronger suit of Southern Africa over here, and then, well, these guys, they're not much. So Nigeria has a pretty fun time pushing into this country without consequence. They continue on until eventually they meet Liberia, and that's where the blue team starts to defend itself. Hey, speaking of the blue team, the United States is using a majority of its navy to hold off any red team advances over here in the Pacific. It's shielding mostly North America, leaving South America exposed, which may be, well, the death of South America. I don't think Africa's going to do naval landings, but we very well could see China and Australia carry out a landing across the Pacific into South America. The only problem with that is the Pacific Ocean is huge, and that would probably take a couple of days. So realistically, an invasion of South America from China is not possible, but this is an AdizzPro video, so yeah. And I'm sorry if this video is a little bit more fast-paced than usual. I'm trying out a new kind of pace for content. I don't want to spend as much time as blabbering on other topics and going off topic, of course. I'm doing that right now, but this is just to let you know why. And then, of course, also, I just want to make the content better. It's also 10 o'clock at night, 10:30 at night, so I want to go to bed. Anyway, back over here in Europe, we figured out that France's defense is not, well, 100% solid. And we see something similar happening that happened in World War II with the red team just going around. Britain is quick to withdraw all of their troops from France, and France is like, man, screw you. The red team swivels down. They push through the defenses over here in the east, and now they have a field day taking Paris all the way down over here to the Atlantic Ocean. We have the surrender of northern France, and eventually Spain recalls all of its army to these mountains right here to set up a defense. France eventually surrenders, and of course they're going to be the first to surrender. So now the UK is a little bit worried because of course they're now completely surrounded by the red team, and the navy is starting to surround the island. Spain has a pretty good area for defense here. These mountains are pretty rigid, but they might have to be wary of an invasion from Italy into this area, especially over here near Barcelona and eventually Madrid. But now back down in Africa, we had the first blue team advance coming from Algeria into Tunisia. They take Tunis with ease, and from here this country is going to surrender. Now the Algerians enter into Libya and take Tripoli within a couple of weeks. It is here that we finally see the Indians, the Middle Easterners, and the Egyptians start to mobilize into Libya in order to stop the advance of the Algerians. The Algerians take a little bit more land and then eventually set up a pretty plausible defense that is going to hold off the red team for a little bit. They're doing essentially the same thing as France, but except they don't have like the terrain advantage because it's mostly flat throughout here. There are some mountains, of course, but other than that, it's like desert. We also see Algeria make a move into Nigeria. This is not Nigeria, this is Niger. And basically what they're trying to do here is distract Nigeria from advancing into the southern area of Africa, because if they do that, they could eventually sweep up and invade Algeria from the west, which is no good. So they're kind of like throwing their arms up like, hey, look at us, we're gonna get you from the north. Fortunately enough, this does work, and we do see the blue team fight back against the Nigerian invaders over here in the west. They don't completely leave, in fact, they just kind of stay in Ghana, but this does distract the Nigerians, and they're actually going to be able to push back this bullet right here. Not by much, but enough to like maybe like make Algeria kind of reconsider their strategy here. We see the blue team enter into this part of Nigeria, but that is going to be it. So at this point, obviously the red team has every advantage possible. Population, economy, military, just this is a red team video. They're gonna win, obviously, right guys? I'm not gonna throw a curveball at you, right? But hey, you remember how I was talking about South America being invaded earlier? Well, that just happened. Chinese, Russian, Australian, Indian, and a lot more of other types of troops land over here in Ecuador. And from here, they blitz through the country, wiping it off the map. And they start to rapidly expand into Peru and Colombia. This, of course, is going to grab the attention of the United States of America, who's going to say, no, 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 bombs. They're going to bomb the Chinese Navy, which is probably all throughout here. Of course, they do still have their own naval wall, which is up through here and into the Panama Canal, so they kind of did extend it a little bit. Atlantic Ocean wise, of course, there's going to be some protection, but probably nothing compared to the Pacific, where the bigger threat is. But eventually, we do have this little invasion kind of stalling out and not going as well. It's going to stalemate, and the blue team is going to eventually start to kick it back a little bit, but unfortunately for them, they're not going to be able to kick them off the continent, as the Chinese and all of the other countries have solidified their presence in South America. In fact, they're about to solidify their presence in other countries as well. Nigeria and co are able to push back the Algerians out of the southern African nations over here, and from here they have one full-on advance out from the red team. This is chaotic, and it's not a good strategy. However, these countries over here are not strong. These countries up here, they are. So technically, if the red team is able to blitz across to the Atlantic Ocean, they could separate them from these guys, and from there, just take care of business down here, and invade Morocco and Algeria up from the south and the west, while also pushing them back over here in the east. And that's exactly what their strategy is. So the spearhead starts to formulate. Of course, they're also going to expand their front line while they're doing this with ease, and eventually the red team shoots across and meets up with the Atlantic Ocean. The United States then pulls all of its troops out from this area of Africa and puts them back over here in northern Africa, and this is going to cause the complete collapse of this part of Africa, with all of these little countries starting to fall apart or surrender. Eventually, the red team sees complete control over this area, and they start to advance north towards Morocco and Algeria. At the same time, we also have the red team pushing back the Algerians over here in Libya, and now it's not looking too great for the blue team, as the red team is finally doing a lot. In fact, we just had some major event take place over here with France. We had a combined invasion and naval landing taking place in the northern part of Spain, and this is eventually going to seep down into the Catalonian region. They'll grab Barcelona and push across the mountains. Ignore that sentence I just said. And slowly but surely, any troops that are in Spain are going to start to get pushed out as the red team is advancing towards Madrid rapidly. We have them reaching down and capturing the capital city, which is eventually going to lead to the Americans, not just these Americans, but all of these Americans, pulling their troops from Spain and leading the country to fall to the red team. Portugal, I'm sorry, but you don't stand a chance. These islands are bye-bye. No, actually no, these islands, sink them into the ocean. There we go. So now the only blue team presence over here in the old world is going to be on the British Isles, Iceland if you consider it old world, and then Algeria and Morocco. Their advance over here is going to be called back, and they're going to be told to defend the border of Algeria. The red team pushes up to said border, and also Morocco's border. These islands are captured. The United States pulls all of its troops from this region, and eventually we have the complete onslaught of Algeria. Of course, they're invading desert down here, so it's actually not doing too much damage, but once they start to get towards the north, they're going to, well, take Algiers and then boom. Morocco, you're not going to be much better off. Of course, there are mountain ranges up here in the north, but this is like a lot of troops, like millions of troops. So unfortunately, Morocco is going to die, and there is a mass migration of blue team citizens over towards the Americas because they kind of see it as a safe haven that the red team will take a while to get. Of course, we're going to ignore this. Yeah, so a majority of them are going to the United States because that seems like the best option. The strongest country that's not on the red team that remains. So obviously, You're going to go to them because they're going to protect you. They're not going to use you as meat shields, right? We're not Russia, right? All right, Britain's going to start evacuating its citizens too, and instead of going to America, they're going to Canada, specifically this northern area up here, because no one is there, and no one's probably going to invade that. At the same time, the British Navy is completely barricading the island in, with the red team surrounding it on all sides in the water. They're gonna need it because it's not looking great. Of course, the red team and blue team do have some dignity, so the migration of citizens is still allowed through the red team. They're not that evil. I'm not even saying they're evil in the first place. This is a fictional scenario, so yeah, it's not like good versus bad. It's just red versus blue. There is no good guy, there is no bad guy, basically. But yeah, the British army and military is going to do everything it can to defend the island, but it's just not going to work out. There's a mass just migration of everyone to the Americas. Eventually landing is made, London is captured, and we have the British government basically fleeing to America as the Isle falls, and followed by this, of course, is Ireland. They did the same thing as Britain did. So now it's New World versus Old World. But of course, the Old World is already here, and they've been packing troops into this. Of course, the US has been shooting at these ships, blowing them up, and they have inflicted a lot of casualties, hundreds of thousands, in fact. However, it's just the combined Navy of all this is going to outsmart and outmaneuver and also outpower the US Navy. We even see ships going under South America and up to here to avoid detection by the Americans. Pretty smart, but also pretty costly. But nonetheless, this little red spot right here is ready to expand. And expand it does as it reaches parts of Peru, causing that country to surrender. We see them enter into the Amazon only to get murdered by anacondas. That's fine though. There's about a million other people who can take that spot. They seep down into Chile, who is going to do everything it can to defend itself, but eventually we have the capturing of Santiago and the surrender of Chile. And at this point, a new mentality is starting to breach the blue team countries as they all eye up surrendering and seeing that as the best option for the government and the citizens. But the United States gives a pretty compelling speech to these remaining North American countries, saying that, hey, we're going to defend this continent until we can't defend it anymore. Maybe we can get a peace treaty out of this and survive on as our own. Canada and Mexico were like, yeah, yo, let's do it. And then South America's like, it's already too late. We see surrenders from Paraguay, Bolivia, and Uruguay. Eventually, Argentina surrenders as well. Colombia and Venezuela are soon to follow. These guys are just murdered. And Brazil is the last remaining country in South America, with the red team advancing from all sides. They move up from the south and take over some major cities. Brasilia is around right there, I think, so they're going to start to go for it. Eventually, Brazil says, you know what? Troops, go up there. Citizens, up there. We are done. So now, with the majority of the blue team under red team control, the United States is going to take matters into its own hands, kind of like what it was already doing, but they're going to set up a defense that spans across Guatemala and Belize, as well as encompasses all of North America minus Greenland. That might be an issue later on. We'll see. So basically, everyone leaves these countries and goes into Mexico. The Caribbean islands are completely lost. The United States nukes the hell out of Cuba for some reason. Same thing with southern Greenland, so no one can use it. And this is what we're left with. Just Mexico, US, and Canada, as well as Belize and Guatemala. Now, this is stalemated for a fairly long time until eventually we do have a landing being made over here in Newfoundland. Newfoundland. I think it's just Newfoundland. And this little invasion starts to pick up speed until eventually the Americans are like, screw this area, let's protect this more populated area. And that area up north of it is soon to fall to the red team. Hey, you remember how Britain wanted to go here? Well, yeah, that's now red team. And slowly but surely, it seems like Canada might be a lost cause as the red team starts to take more and more land. Eventually, we're left with something like this, which, if you believe it or not, this is actually still a country. This is Canada. A majority of their population lies within this little blue area. So yeah, Canada still exists with millions of people. They're just like all over here. So Canada is fine. Their military is still fighting, although it's a very long border. In fact, it's the longest border in the world. Meanwhile, down south, things are looking too great as the red team was able to push back the Americans and Mexicans all the way up so to the capture of Mexico City and meet the border of the United States of America. At this point, the US loses Hawaii, which they probably should have a long time ago. And here we go, USA versus the world. That's right, I've already referenced like 2 or 3 videos in this video, so good on me for being creative. Anyway, at this point in the war, the United States is going to surrender over to the red team. Unfortunately, we don't get to see America get picked apart, so if you're not from America and you hate it, I'm sorry. But if you hate America, it means you also hate me, and that's not very nice, so you should probably not hate me. So the red team has won this video, and just similar to the East versus West video, there's not going to be a peace treaty because it doesn't make sense to have a peace treaty. Of course, the red team might take some land, but it was a combined continental effort. Therefore, no country should get land over another. If they were to do that, I would assume the major powers like Russia, China, India, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, Egypt, Australia, Japan, South Korea, North Korea, they're all going to get the land. and then the other countries are probably going to be mad. They might rebel against them, and it could just go on to a whole different scenario. So that's why I'm not going to do a peace treaty here. Basically what we're going to see in this peace treaty, if there was one, peace treaty like land-wise, we're just going to see the invaded countries get new governments. Pro-red team governments, of course. And at this point, the world is united under one kind of, I guess, theology, and everything's great. Because being united under one theology is probably like the best thing for the world, unless it's like a really bad one. I'm probably not even using the word theology right, because I'm stupid. But anyway, that is going to do it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and share the video with anyone who might be interested. I'm not sure if we hit 100K yet. The live stream is probably going to be at 99.6 thousand subscribers. So if we did hit it, then hooray. I'm saying subscribe for no reason. Well, no, I want you to subscribe, of course, because there's future milestones to go for past 100K. But also, like, if we are there, then subscribe, obviously. I can't imagine going into next week not being at 100K, because I'm going to start live streaming either at 99.5 or 99.6, maybe 99.7, depending on how I'm feeling and, of course, what time it is. I just want to make it more convenient for you guys. I know I said before that I would start live streaming as soon as we hit 99.5. But I've kind of rethought that, you know, if I start streaming at 12 in the morning, I'm going to lose a lot of the Americans. And, of course, the Americans make up a majority of this audience, so I don't want to do that. And then, of course, if I start streaming like at, say, 8 o'clock, I'm going to lose a majority of the rest of the world, or as well as like Europe. So I don't want to cut anyone out. I'm going to live stream at maybe 11 o'clock on Saturday, which is the day that this video goes out. So you might be seeing this video as I start live streaming. And if that's the case, you might actually see this video on Sunday, just to make it a little bit more fair. So I know I just went over a lot of information there. I'm probably going to put this into a community post as we get closer. But basically, thank you for everything. Just thank you. That's all I can say. I'm really appreciative of you guys, and I couldn't do it without you. But thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Bye.